You might want to read page 4 before you tow that truck, Sheriff. The smell of wet diesel and fresh rain drifted through the cul-de-sac as 3 patrol cruisers boxed in my mud-covered utility truck at 5:47 a.m. Red and blue lights bounced across perfectly trimmed lawns while Rebecca Sterling stood on the sidewalk in a white tennis jacket clutching a stack of HOA complaints like she'd finally won a war. "That vehicle's been leaking chemicals for weeks," she snapped. "And he's operating commercial equipment in a residential zone." One deputy started photographing my truck while another copied down the DOT numbers on the door. I didn't say much. Just handed the sheriff a thick county permit binder streaked with dried mud. The moment he flipped past the towing request form, his jaw tightened. Rain tapped against the hood as he read line after line in silence. Then his radio crackled. "Sheriff, County Flood Control just upgraded tonight's storm warning to emergency status." Rebecca's smile disappeared when he turned to look at the drainage canal behind her subdivision. The sheriff stepped away from the cruisers and stared toward the concrete drainage channel cutting behind Willow Creek Estates while cold wind rattled the storm warning signs along the curb. Rebecca kept talking anyway. "This man parks heavy equipment overnight and destroys the appearance of the neighborhood." The deputy beside her stopped writing the moment the county database finished loading on his tablet. I could hear the faint electronic chirp even over the rumble of thunder rolling somewhere west of town. The sheriff flipped deeper into my permit file and found the inspection history tied to my truck's registration number. Every 6 months for 11 years. Flood response contractor. Emergency culvert access. County rapid deployment authorization. Then he found the map attached to the permit packet. Rebecca's decorative stone wall sat directly over a marked runoff easement feeding the entire subdivision basin. The sheriff slowly lowered the papers. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "who approved construction over county drainage access?" Rebecca stopped answering the second another patrol car pulled into the street carrying a county inspector. The county inspector climbed out carrying a yellow waterproof case and a rolled survey map tucked under his arm. Rain started ticking harder against the patrol cars as neighbors gathered under garage doors holding coffee mugs and phones. Rebecca tried to laugh it off. "This is ridiculous. That wall was approved by the architectural committee." The inspector ignored her and walked straight to the stone landscaping beside the canal. He scraped his boot against the fresh mulch until bright orange paint markings appeared underneath. Utility boundary markers. Buried on purpose. The air smelled like wet concrete and fertilizer as he unrolled the county survey across the hood of the cruiser. A blue line cut directly beneath Rebecca's new retaining wall and decorative palm trees. Storm runoff channel. No obstruction permitted within 12 feet. The sheriff looked at her board approval packet, then at the county seal stamped across the survey. Different measurements. Different property lines. Somebody had altered the subdivision copy before construction started. Then the inspector pointed toward a steel floodgate half hidden behind the wall. "If that gate cannot open tonight," he said, "this entire street is going underwater first." Rebecca grabbed the survey papers with trembling fingers and immediately blamed the contractor. The HOA paid for approved improvements. We followed the plans exactly. The county inspector did not even look up. He walked to my truck, unlocked the side equipment box, and pulled out a muddy tablet sealed in a weatherproof case. One tap opened 3 months of drainage inspection photos. Time-stamped. GPS verified. Every image showed the runoff channel completely clear until 2 weeks earlier when fresh stonework suddenly appeared around the floodgate. The inspector enlarged the final photo. Rebecca herself stood beside the wall smiling for a community newsletter picture while workers poured concrete directly over the county access hatch. A low rumble rolled across the sky as more emergency alerts buzzed through nearby phones. Then another problem surfaced. The inspector checked rainfall projections and froze. This retention basin is already 70% full. The sheriff slowly turned toward the subdivision entrance where water had started pooling against the curb before the storm had even fully arrived. Water crept across the asphalt in thin black streams while the first real wave of rain hammered rooftops hard enough to drown out the police radios. Neighbors started dragging trash cans and patio furniture toward their garages as the county inspector rushed to the floodgate with a pry bar from my truck. It did not move an inch. Concrete from Rebecca's landscaping project had sealed half the mechanism shut. The metallic smell of soaked steel filled the air while runoff poured faster into the canal behind the homes. Then the sheriff received another call. 2 streets downhill already had water entering their storm drains backward. Wrong direction. The inspector looked at me immediately. Can your rig pull the barrier section out? Rebecca stepped between us and snapped that nobody was touching HOA property without board approval. The sheriff stared at her for a long second before pointing toward the rising waterline climbing her own decorative curb. Ma'am, he said quietly, your board stopped being in charge about 3 feet ago. Then every streetlight in the subdivision flickered once. The moment the lights flickered out, garage doors across Willow Creek froze halfway open and the neighborhood alarm system started chirping one after another like nervous birds. Rainwater surged over the sidewalks now, carrying mulch, soda cans, and broken palm fronds straight toward the blocked canal. I backed my truck onto the flooded curb while the inspector hooked a steel recovery chain around the buried floodgate housing. Rebecca kept shouting about liability until the sheriff cut her off and ordered deputies to clear the street. My engine growled low as the tires bit into the soaked pavement. Then came the sound everybody heard at once. Crack. Concrete split beneath the landscaping wall and muddy water exploded through the opening like a busted fire hydrant. The runoff finally started moving the right direction again. Neighbors rushed backward as the current dragged decorative stones halfway down the street. The inspector checked his tablet, then looked up fast. Hold on, he said. There is another blockage farther upstream. Then every phone in the subdivision buzzed with a flash flood warning. The upstream blockage turned out to be worse than the wall. We followed the canal 2 streets north where brown water churned against a brand new wooden footbridge covered in HOA decorative lighting. The current hammered the support beams hard enough to shake the railings. The inspector flashed his light underneath and swore under his breath. Sandbags. Dozens of them stacked beneath the bridge to create an artificial pond for Rebecca's landscaping project. The setup had narrowed the runoff channel by almost half. Rain hammered my jacket while deputies forced stunned homeowners back from the rushing water. One resident finally spoke up. Rebecca told us the county approved a private water feature. The inspector pulled permits from the county database again. No approval. No inspection. Nothing. Then he found something even uglier. The HOA contractor listed on the bridge paperwork shared the exact same office address as Rebecca's real estate company. The sheriff slowly looked over at her as another loud cracking sound echoed from the bridge supports. The bridge gave way 10 minutes later with a deep wooden groan that rolled through the storm like thunder. Water ripped through the collapsed railings and blasted the sandbags downstream, finally reopening the full runoff channel. Deputies sprinted backward as muddy water surged beneath the streetlights carrying broken landscaping timbers and expensive decorative lanterns into the drainage basin. Rebecca stood frozen in the rain while homeowners crowded around the sheriff demanding answers about the fake approvals and missing HOA funds. The inspector kept scrolling through contractor invoices on his tablet. Same billing address. Same signatures. Then he opened the financial disclosures tied to the subdivision improvement account. More than $200,000 had been routed into a consulting company registered under Rebecca's brother-in-law. The sheriff took off his hat slowly as water levels across the neighborhood finally began dropping inch by inch. For the first time all night, my truck engine shut off and the street went quiet. Then a deputy walked over holding another folder pulled from Rebecca's SUV. Inside the folder from Rebecca's SUV sat printed emails, unsigned permit drafts, and one county rejection notice dated 8 months earlier. The request to modify the drainage channel had already been denied twice before construction even started. Red stamped letters across the page read "Not approved for flood zone alteration." Rainwater dripped from the sheriff's hat brim while nearby homeowners read over his shoulder in complete silence. Rebecca finally tried blaming the contractor again, but the deputy opened another document showing her electronic signature authorizing emergency landscaping expenses 3 days after the rejection notice arrived. That was the moment the entire street turned on her. People who had complained about my truck for months were now staring at the flooded sidewalks and busted retaining walls surrounding their own homes. By sunrise, county crews had reopened the canal and emergency pumps lined the entrance road. My truck sat covered in mud beside the flashing utility trailers while inspectors tagged half the HOA projects with violation tape. Funny thing is, nobody complained about the diesel smell anymore.